Sergio Pérez may get a chance to return to Formula One in 2025, and the person openly campaigning for his return is none other than Max Verstappen, who was his teammate at Red Bull. However, is the four-time world champion's support truly sincere? Or are there hidden motives behind his statements? Even more relevant, does Pérez truly deserve another chance on the grid after all the turmoil that marked his departure from Red Bull? The scenario becomes intriguing when we look at the current circumstances. Cadillac is preparing to enter Formula One as a new team, expanding the grid to 22 cars for the first time in 10 years. This represents two completely new positions, and the American team has already shown interest in hiring veteran drivers to help with the adaptation during the early years in the top flight. This is where Sergio Pérez emerges as a logical alternative, receiving immediate public backing from Verstappen. The Dutchman was categorical when asked about this possibility. "I believe so. The Czech has always proven to be very competent. He has had some difficult periods with us, but on the other hand, it is clear that this regularly happens to us." Verstappen's statement has profound implications. By mentioning that it regularly happens to us, he is practically acknowledging that Red Bull is an extremely demanding environment for any driver other than himself. How many talented drivers have passed through Red Bull and faced obstacles when competing alongside Verstappen? Let's look at the numbers. Pérez has 281 Formula One starts, making him the 8th most experienced driver in history. That experience is precisely what Cadillac needs. Verstappen particularly emphasized the Mexican's performance in teams such as Force India and Racing Point, where he invariably scored points. This observation is key because it shows that Pérez has a consistent track record when not under the extreme pressure of competing for victories alongside the current dominant driver in the sport. The question that arises is, why is Verstappen being so explicit in his defense of Pérez? Is it genuine admiration for the Mexican driver, or is there some underlying strategy? Let's remember that Pérez had a tumultuous departure from Red Bull at the end of 2024 after an extremely complicated season. The disparity in performance between the two teammates became untenable, creating a delicate situation within the team. The pressure on Pérez intensified mainly after drivers such as Yuki Tsunoda, currently Verstappen's teammate at Red Bull, began to show solid results at other teams. When Verstappen says, "I've always had an excellent relationship with Checo," he seeks to distinguish his personal relationship from his professional results. This is relevant because it demonstrates the four-time champion's maturity, but it also raises questions about the internal dynamics at Red Bull. If the relationship was so positive, why did Pérez's performance decline so dramatically? Was it a problem with the car, pressure from the team, or simply a difference in skill between the two drivers? It is important to remember that Red Bull has a history of quickly burning out drivers when they fail to keep up with the pace of the lead driver. Verstappen's defense takes on even greater relevance when we consider the current Formula One landscape. With Lewis Hamilton now at Ferrari alongside Charles Leclerc, and promising young drivers such as Andrea Kimi Antonelli at Mercedes, Gabriel Bortoleto at Sauber, and Oliver Bearman at Haas, the grid is undergoing a substantial generational transformation. In this context, Pérez's experience may be exactly what Cadillac needs to quickly establish itself. Furthermore, the presence of Carlos Sainz at Williams and Fernando Alonso remaining at Aston Martin demonstrates that veteran drivers continue to be valued in the paddock. However, there is another perspective to this narrative that cannot be overlooked. Pérez faced tremendous difficulties in 2024, particularly in the second half of the season. His inconsistent performances cost Red Bull precious points in the Constructors' Championship and called into question his ability to manage pressure in elite teams. The question is, in a new team like Cadillac, without the pressure to fight for victories immediately, would Pérez be able to return to his best form? Verstappen's statement that, "As long as he has the motivation to compete, I think it's absolutely, even with a new team, an excellent choice," is enlightening. The four-time champion is establishing motivation as a crucial element, suggesting that perhaps a lack of it was part of Pérez's problems at Red Bull. After all, it is difficult to stay motivated when you understand that, regardless of your efforts, you are unlikely to outperform your teammate. This psychological reality is devastating for any elite athlete. For Cadillac, recruiting Pérez would make sense strategically. They would get a driver with extensive experience, in-depth knowledge of the current regulations, and a proven ability to score points with cars that are not the fastest on the grid. Remember his achievements in Sakir in 2020 and Monaco in 2022, occasions when he demonstrated that he still has speed when the circumstances are favorable. Pérez also has an exceptional record in street races and circuits that demand maximum precision, something that could be valuable for a new team learning to operate on different types of tracks. The timing is also ideal. With the expansion of the grid, there is no immediate pressure for extraordinary results. Cadillac will likely be focused on learning, developing, and gradually moving up the ranks. This environment could be perfect for Pérez to rediscover his confidence and demonstrate that he still has a place in Formula One. In addition, the Mexican's experience in car development, gained over more than a decade in the category, would be invaluable to a team starting from scratch. But does Pérez really want to return? After his traumatic experience at Red Bull, is he prepared to go through the whole process again? More importantly, can he accept that he probably won't be fighting for wins in Cadillac's early years? The pride of a driver who has won races and stood on the podium alongside the world's best could be a significant obstacle to accepting a more modest role. The answer may lie in the competitive nature of Formula One drivers. Once you experience the adrenaline rush of racing at the highest level, it is difficult to simply walk away. Pérez is still only 35 years old, in good physical condition, and has knowledge that few drivers possess. The opportunity with Cadillac may be exactly what he needs to end his career with dignity. Comparing similar cases, we see that drivers such as Fernando Alonso, now 43, remain competitive even in teams that do not consistently compete for victories. Verstappen's public support adds an interesting dimension to the whole situation. It shows that despite the frustrating results, there is mutual respect between the two drivers. And perhaps more importantly, it demonstrates that Verstappen recognizes that Pérez's problems at Red Bull were not just a matter of talent, but also of circumstances and pressure. This public statement may also influence other teams and sponsors to consider Pérez as a viable alternative. Cadillac's entry into Formula One represents more than just 2 new seats on the grid. It is an opportunity for renewal for experienced drivers who may have left their teams under difficult circumstances. For Pérez, it would be a chance to prove that his time at Red Bull does not completely define his abilities as a driver. It is a redemption story that Formula One fans love to follow. If Pérez does return to Formula One with Cadillac, it will be one of the most fascinating stories of the 2025 season. An experienced driver trying to prove he still has a place on the grid, in a new team trying to establish itself in the most competitive category in world motorsport. And with the endorsement of one of the greatest talents in recent Formula One history. The question that remains is Max Verstappen right to support Pérez, or is this just a show of courtesy between former teammates? What do you think? Does Pérez deserve another chance in Formula One, or is it time to make way for new talent? Leave your opinions in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth analysis from behind the scenes of Formula One.